sales minus operating expenses is called operating profit. Or what kind of profit is this? This is the stage where from sales they have recovered the operating expenses, but they still have not paid dividends to shareholders, they have still not paid interest to the lenders, they have still not paid income tax to the government. So this figure is also called PBIT, profit before interest, before tax, and of course before dividends. Or this figure is called EBIT, earnings before interest and tax. So Globe Furniture says, please take from us 20%, maybe 30%. We are even willing to give you 50%. But shareholders, please don't take this entire 1 billion away. Why is Globe saying this? Are they trying to cheat the shareholders? Answer is no. Ultimately, shareholders are the owners of this organization. Then why? Having promised to them that all this profit will be given to them, why is Globe Furniture not distributing this profit amongst the shareholders? An organization having a profit of 1 billion and accompanied by a bank balance of 1 billion is impossible, but an organization having profits of 1 billion accompanied by a bank balance of negative 600 million is absolutely possible. So the first and the most important reason why this profit is not being distributed among shareholders is, where is the money? If this was an unplanned garnering of resources, then we can visualize one out of two things happening. When Globe Furniture now goes to invest this money in acquiring assets, it will either find halfway through acquisition of assets, it will run out of money, or it will find it has bought all the assets that it needed and still has money left over. Either this organization will run short of money or they will have surplus money. Tell me which is a happier state of affairs. Should an organization have less money than they need, or should they have more money than they need? If you have less money than you need, you will get into trouble. And if you have more money than you need, I think you will get into bigger trouble. Folks, I'm now giving you a mantra for good finance management, and that mantra is, please remember, less is bad, more is worse. I think the ability on the part of every individual in the organization to understand the impact on the organization's bottom line of every action of theirs is what finance management is. And why should everybody understand how their actions are going to impact the organization's bottom line? So that, as far as possible, each person does those things that impact the bottom line positively and avoids doing those things that hurt the bottom line. This is what finance management is. And from this point of view, every person whose actions have the power to affect the bottom line is a finance person. Now, if I ask you a question again, how many of your actions affect the organization's bottom line? I hope this time all hands will go up. The study has found that out of all the sick units in the world, more than 95% were not sick due to any of these three reasons. In other words, these three reasons put together were responsible for not more than 5% of sickness. And over 95% of businesses were sick due to one reason: financial mismanagement. Now, while there are no magic formulae, what I'm going to do with you now is pretty close to that. I am going to give you what, in my opinion, is good finance management, presented to you in the form of two rules. Let's call them the two golden rules of good finance management. Please try and understand what I'm saying. I am trying to tell you, you have to recognize that as an organization, you do not own a single piece of equipment. You do not own a single piece of machinery. You do not have a single motor car or a single laptop. You have no assets that do not have a corresponding liability. And you have no liabilities that do not have a cost. And if your liabilities are costing you on an average 65%, then your assets should be earning for you 65%. And now if you find one penny on the right hand side which is idle for one day more than necessary, it should hurt you here. What are you doing sitting idle? Go out and earn 65%. Because if you don't earn 65%, your neighbor will have to earn 130%, 65% for you and 65% for itself. Do you now recognize what a crime gets committed when an organization holds on to something known as non-moving inventory? How can it not move? Move! You're costing me 65, go and earn 65. Let's imagine A goes to a bank to borrow and B goes to a bank to borrow, and if the banker lends to both of them, their obligation towards the banker is going to be to the tune of 100. A says, I can earn 1,000 and B says, I can earn 5,000. Is the banker going to be more impressed by B? Not necessarily. Why not? How does it matter to the banker how much do you earn? So long as you can earn sufficiently enough to pay the bank. Both of them owe the banker 100. If you earn more, are you going to pay more to the banker? Answer is no. Bankers' returns are frozen. Who would be impressed if the organization can earn more? It is the shareholder who is going to get proportionately greater returns. So folks, what I'm trying to tell you is, when it comes to choosing between profitability and stability, the banker will go for stability. So what does a typical working capital cycle for an organization in the manufacturing industry look like? Today they've got cash. Then they spend the cash and acquire raw materials. So it gets converted into raw materials inventory. When the raw materials go into production process, it gets converted into finished product. Then they find customers for the finished product. It gets converted into debtors or receivables. And when they collect money from the customers, it becomes cash again. This cycle of cash to cash is called the working capital cycle. One of the tricks of good finance management is your ability to shorten the cycle. Folks, if you are comfortable so far, I think you are ready to read balance sheets. Whichever balance sheet you pick up, you will be able to recognize this is either a type A balance sheet or a type B balance sheet or a type C balance sheet. There are only 3 types of balance sheets in this world. Rule number 2 said, when people come knocking on your door saying, can we have our money back? Make sure at that time on the asset side, you have doors available to you where you can go knocking saying, can we have our money back so that we can pay our liabilities? Now tell me, on the asset side, which assets will generate money in the short period? You do appreciate that long-term assets will never generate the money, because organizations do not buy land building machine in order to sell. And therefore, the only asset that will generate money in the short period of time are the short-term assets, the current assets. When the short-term assets are insufficient to meet short-term liabilities, it is then that organizations are forced to sell the long-term assets in order to pay short-term liabilities. And when the day dawns that an organization has to sell its buildings, its equipment, its machinery to pay who? A raw material supplier? To me, it looks like the beginning of the end of that organization.